In terms of the session this morning, some of the things that we'll be covering, I've kind of just put a bit of a list together here. We'll dive into a few of these things in a little bit more detail. But some kind of notable points in here are things like Microsoft To Do. So if you ever kind of used Tasks previously, Tasks is still in Outlook, but it's really kind of evolved into the To Do app, which is really quite a powerful little tool. Certainly helping me be a little bit more organised in terms of my day to day. But we'll take you through some of the basics, some things that perhaps are a little bit more complex that you may or may not use. So things like conditional formatting, etc., where we can change the way things look and feel. In terms of kind of Outlook sessions, I always start with my kind of little cybersecurity kind of pitch. Really, is that firstly, forgetting whatever email account that you use, whether it's your work email account or your personal email account, it's vitally important that you make sure that the security set up around that is as secure as it can be. Just kind of put this little table on the screen here to really demonstrate this, and I need to update this slide deck actually to this year's figures. But what I like to point out here is, so this is a table that shows how easy it is to kind of brute force guess people's passwords these days. So with modern technology, with modern hardware, actually to try every single variation of somebody's password doesn't actually take that long, particularly if your password's isn't very long either. So what I normally ask, point people out to is, and there's lots of information on here, but if we look at the right-hand column, what this is talking about is a password that contains numbers, uppercase, lowercase, letters, and symbols. So something that we would deem as a complex password. With modern hardware, it only takes, and this has changed quite dramatically this year. Last year it would take 39 minutes to crack that. And this year it's come down to 5 minutes. So that's just the way hardware and technology has evolved. The important message here is make sure that you've got multi-factor authentication set up on all of your email accounts, because if somebody gains access to your email, if you think of any website or service that you go to, if I've got access to your email account and I want to gain access to your Amazon account, all I need to do is to go to amazon.com, pop in the click on the link where it says forgot your password. Because I've got access to your email account, I can send a reset password request through to your email and gain access to all of your systems and services. So really, really important that as a minimum, you have multi-factor authentication in place. From a business point of view, we actually need to extend that a little bit further to make sure that people can only sign into your systems and your email only from your work devices, so that we can mitigate kind of the risk of kind of cyber threat. So if that's something that you don't have in place, please absolutely talk to us. But it's vitally important that not just your work email account, but your personal email accounts are protected in exactly the same way. Okay,
I'll just quickly though on that, I think you've made good points before. Is a lot of people would say that they'd forgot their password and it was reset. Then obviously they would see that come through, and they would at that point they would know that obviously something's up. But that's not always the case, is it? When a hack is in your email account.
Yeah, so what they'll normally do is create things like, and we'll show you some of this today actually, but create things like Outlook rules. So they will hide those emails, so you won't necessarily see them come into your inbox. They'll redivert them to kind of subfolders hidden away, so it's not visible to you that this kind of stuff is actually happening. There's different techniques and things that people use as well, but again, ultimately it comes back down to kind of making sure that things are set up really securely off the back of it. Okay, so rather than this kind of being kind of death by PowerPoint, I much prefer to just kind of dive straight in and kind of show you some of these things. So let me just get my information here already, and we will get underway. So the first thing I'd just like to point out to people is, before we start looking at any of the functionality around email, is to kind of dive in to kind of the basic Outlook options, which again is something that most people don't really bother to go and have a look at. To get into the Outlook options, if you just click on File and then go to Options down here on the left-hand side, I'm not going to go through everything in here, but I just think there's a couple of things that are worth pointing out. So firstly, from a productivity perspective, one of the things that can be quite distracting is, so we probably all get quite large volumes of email. So we're in the middle of doing a task, and then suddenly we kind of get the little notification pop up in the bottom right-hand corner, and perhaps something pops up that looks a little bit more interesting than what we're working on at the moment. So it's quite easily for Outlook to become quite a distracting tool for us, because actually there's something new that's popped in, and I'm really intrigued to go and have a look at that. But it can tend to mean that, when we're working on tasks and we need kind of real focus time around that, it can distract us from what we're trying to do and actually make us less productive. So, very much a personal scenario of how you want to get notified. But what I'm tending to find these days is people are actually asking for those notifications to be turned off, so that they'll go in and check their email on a periodic basis. So they perhaps want, we're only going to spend 10 minutes every hour checking their email rather than living in their mailbox. So an easy way of doing that is to go in and actually turn some of the notifications off. So within Outlook options and going to mail, under this kind of message arrival tab, we can turn on what type of notifications we want to happen. So if we don't want those kind of distractions and those constant pop-ups and those constant messages, we can kind of go and turn off sounds. We can get, we perhaps might just want to leave the envelope icon there so that we can see that there's something there, but we don't know what it is. But we could perhaps turn off the desktop alert. So where you kind of get the little message preview box that appears in the bottom right corner, you might just want to set it, again, completely personal, to you and how you like to work, and dependent, very much on your job role and what people do, but just worth going in and noting those. The other thing from a kind of basic setup perspective is going into your calendar options. So firstly, things like setting your working hours. So these days, there's all sorts of other tools which we will cover in different webinars, but things like Microsoft Bookings or Calendly, or you might have seen these kind of scheduling options where you can arrange and book meetings with people. Well, you still need to set your working hours, and different people's hours, vary. So just going into your calendar options, you can set your working hours, you can set what days of the week you work, you can set, what the first working day is. What I also do is make sure that I tick this box these days to make sure that there's an online meeting added to all my meetings. So if I just go into my calendar and create a new appointment, by default, having that option ticked, it will make every single meeting a Teams meeting or add a Teams link into the meeting itself. The other challenge I find these days, and it seems to be becoming more and more common, is that we're having more and more Teams meetings, and we can end up with back-to-back Teams meetings and not necessarily having time between those, just to really plan for the next meeting and actually just getting a reminder and notification that, I am jumping straight off this call onto another one. So there's a calendar option in here that we can shorten appointments and meetings. So for meetings, that are less than an hour, it's automatically going to shave 5 minutes off that meeting time. So if it's, by default, if it was going to be a half-an-hour meeting, it's going to shorten it to 25. So it's just going to perhaps give you time either for a comfort break or just to give you the opportunity just to prep for the next meeting. So just give you a little breather rather than jumping off from one call to another. And that will show as a little reminder within your Teams call that this meeting's coming to an end, with a few minutes notice. So it does give you time to wrap up that call that you're on. So it is worth kind of just having a kind of a quick through these options that you've got in here. Something that kind of often gets overlooked, but really worthwhile just kind of going to take a little look. Okay, so there's just some of the Outlook options that we've got available. Some of the other options that we have here is things like when we go to send a new email, and within sending new emails, we've got an options tab at the top here. Now, when we click on there, we've got the ability of things like requesting a delivery receipt or requesting a read receipt. I wouldn't necessarily have these. You can turn these on by default for all emails. I personally wouldn't suggest doing that, more just for important ones, because we can start to get a lot of mailbox clutter. So your inbox starts to fill up. You start to get lots of noise and things like that coming through. So they become less relevant. So, but certainly if I'm sending an important email and I want to know when it's read, I can add a read receipt off the back of that as well. Some of the other things that you can do in here, again, what's quite important is if you're sending sensitive information. So if you're ever sending any kind of financial information, any information's got personal identifiable information in there, it's really important that we are actually encrypting those messages, so that those emails cannot be seen by anybody else. So with email encryption, if we're sending sensitive information, we can stop things like that message being forwarded on to somebody else. We can stop somebody from printing it. It's not going to stop somebody taking a screenshot or a photograph of the message, but we can have some controls and mechanisms in place over that message itself to make sure that any sensitive information or detail isn't exposed in there. Because this is within my kind of demo tenancy, I haven't kind of got this set up in here. But by default, if you're using the Microsoft 365 Business Premium license or anything above that, these message encryption options are there and can be configured and set up. So something really worthwhile noting, but really, really important. If you are sending anything with personal identifiable information, financial information, anything that's commercially sensitive, you really, really should be encrypting those messages. Particularly, with the way kind of modern cybersecurity is as well. And then, finally, things like kind of BCC and the from field that you can turn on from here as well. So BCC is called a blind carbon copy. So if you add somebody into, if you're the author of the email and you're sending this message to somebody, you might want to copy somebody else into that email, but not let the intended recipient know that you're copying somebody else into this email. So the BCC field allows you to blind copy somebody in. So the person you're sending it to doesn't know that this other person's also getting a copy of that message. So again, quite often we kind of get asked, where are those options that sit there as well? Yeah, 2 seconds. It's like if you sorry about that. Very slight schoolboy error then. Didn't turn my power on my laptop. So those are kind of some of the message options that we've got available. One of the other things that I kind of often get asked as well is that when I've sent an email, I've perhaps sent it to the wrong person and I want to be able to go and recall that message. Now, the one thing I would point out is that this isn't very successful in terms of the way it works. It does work some of the time and it works in certain scenarios. But if somebody's already read the message, the message recall option won't work and it will send you a failure. But it is something that you can try. So to recall a message that you've sent, if you go into your sent items and go and find the message that you wish to recall, and if you go to under actions, there's an option here that says recall this message. So that will send ultimately it'll send another message that says that I'm trying to recall the message, and it will notify the person I've sent it to that I'm attempting to recall that message because that's something I don't necessarily want you to read, or I've sent it by mistake. The honest answer is though, it isn't that successful in terms of that, and that's because of the way kind of mail servers and mail configurations have changed. So it's not a it's not a fail safe in terms of being able to kind of get that message back. So with that in mind, one of the things that I like to do is actually to create something like an Outlook rule that puts an automatic delay send on emails that I send out. So it just gives me a couple of minutes to go, do you know what, if I press send on that email, I've got the ability to go and stop that message from being sent. So just to show you how that would work, firstly, what I'd need to do is to go and create a rule. Now, rules are kind of really powerful. We can use those for all sorts of things in terms of helping us organize our mailboxes and automatically doing things like filing emails into the correct folder, all sorts of options, which I'll kind of show you where you access that and what you can see. So if I go to rules over here on the top ribbon bar, I can also see if I click on file and go to kind of manage rules and alerts here as well. So, but if I click on rules and I want to go to manage rules and alerts, and in this case, I'm going to go and create a new rule. Now, it pops up a little wizard and kind of talks me through the process of what I want to do. So I can do things like, in terms of being organized, move messages from somebody to a specific folder. I can move messages with specific words in the subject line to a folder. I can do all sorts of things. I can get really quite custom and granular when we go through this. But in terms of the specific issue I'm talking about now, in terms of being able to recall messages, what I want to do here is start with a blank rule. So I don't want to use any kind of template. And I want to apply this rule on all messages I send. So I'm now going to click next. And what I'm going to do here as well now is I'm not actually worried about the condition because I want this to be all messages that are sent. And what I want to do here now is to defer delivery by a number of minutes. So what I'm now saying here is, apply this rule after I send basically any message, and I want to defer the delivery. And in this case, I'm just going to say by 2 minutes. So I'm just going to give myself a little bit of time. So I can now click next, and I can click finish and click OK. So what happens now is if I go to send a new email, so if I send an email out to myself, I'm just going to say it's test, click send. What will happen here is it's going to leave that email in my outbox for 2 minutes. And after 2 minutes, it will send that message and go through. So it just gives me a little bit of time to say, do you know, I really didn't mean to send that message. And I've just built myself like a little fail-safe mechanism in there. And say after a couple of minutes, that will disappear and go. Just kind of diving into rules. Again, I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time here because we could spend the whole hour just talking about rules in themselves. But what I would suggest is kind of feel free to go in and have a look. So again, if I go to manage rules and alerts, go to create a new rule, you could, and I can do this, apply rule on messages I receive. And you can see here is there are a whole host of conditions that we can look at. So we can say, from specific people that contain specific keywords, through the specified account, if they're sent only to me. So I have kind of, what I have done in the past is set up other rules. So actually, for things like if I'm not in the to field or the CC field, i.e. I've been blind carbon copied into an email, actually automatically delete that message. The reason why I've done that historically is because typically they can be kind of spam emails or marketing emails or things like that, that actually there's just information that I don't really want. And, typically, those type of messages, I won't appear in the kind of the to or CC field unless somebody's used some very specific software to be able to do that. But we can also, create different alerts based on importance, sensitivity. And again, you can see there's a whole host of different options in here around it. So rules is something that's really worthwhile coming in, have a look at, have a bit of a play around with it. Just a word of caution, just be very careful when you're using things like specific words in the subject line. The reason why that is, we've seen tickets that have come through to the service desk that somebody, with the best of intentions, created a rule that says, if it contains this word, file it to this folder. And then we'll later get a complaint of, well, I'm not receiving emails from this specific person, or I'm not receiving emails, from this completely different person, and they forgot about this rule that they've created, and it just so happens the subject line of this other email contains this word, and they don't necessarily tie the two together. So just be really a little bit careful when you are getting quite specific and granular, that actually you're not just saying that, if it contains this word or perhaps these two words, that it's, it's a little bit more complex around that. It just avoids some of those issues down the line. Okay, I don't know. Next thing I'm going to kind of move on to is, I don't know if kind of like me, you find scheduling meetings can be quite frustrating. So quite often, if you've perhaps you've got an email thread going on with a customer or a supplier or somebody, somebody internal, and you're just trying to schedule a date, and you've got emails pinging backwards and forwards. Are you available this day? No, I can do this time, but I can't do that time. And that whole kind of email tennis that goes backwards and forwards just isn't very productive sometimes. So there's some ways that we can tackle that with Outlook these days that makes just life much easier. So the first way of doing this is, when we go to create a new email or within the thread of an email, if you go to, so again, so if I go to send an email through to myself, and subject of a meeting, I can insert my calendar. So if and I can do this at any point during the message, but if I go to insert my calendar, I can send my calendar availability either for today, tomorrow, the next 7 days, next 30 days, or all of my calendar to somebody, so that they can see where I've got available slots. So if I, in this case, share my calendar for the next 7 days, I'm only going to choose to show my availability, because I don't want them to necessarily see the full details or limited details of what's actually in my calendar. And I can just click OK. And that's now going to insert, days and times over the next 7 days of when I'm free. So it just helps save a bit of that kind of email backwards and forwards in terms of scheduling appointments. So yeah, quite simply, on an email message, click on insert, click on your calendar, and away you go with that. The other option that we've got now is also, so if I've got perhaps an email here, is a new feature called scheduling polls. Now, these are really good if you're trying to organize meetings with lots of different people. So perhaps you're trying to get your team together, they're working on different locations, or you might have different third parties involved. What you can do here is actually reply with a scheduling poll. So this now gives me the ability to look at my calendar, so I can set the time zone. So in this case, I'm in Sheffield, and I can go, pick the date and time off the back of that, and I can select what dates that I'm available. So perhaps these are the dates and times that I want to offer to this person or this group of people. And if I just click next, I can automatically add make it a Teams meeting. I can set a location. So if this is perhaps going to be in the boardroom, or it's going to be in Chesterfield, or it's going to be in London, or wherever it may be, I can set the location there. And I can also set my poll settings. So by default, these are the options that are ticked. So what this first option going to do is it's going to schedule automatically the meeting. So even though I've selected perhaps half a dozen times there across the various items, this will automatically schedule the meeting where the consensus of people will, you know, have voted for the meeting at that time. If they all agree to multiple options, so perhaps everybody can do 12:30 and they can all do 2:30, by default it will go to the earliest option that's been scheduled. So again, it's just, you know, it's going to do this automatically for you. It's going to notify you of any kind of poll updates as they come through. It's going to hold the times that you've selected in your calendar until it's scheduled as well. So, you know, we've effectively got those times penciled in so they can't be overbooked. Again, something that happens quite often. You know, and I've got multiple people that have access to my calendar, and they're, you know, perhaps all fighting over different times in terms of scheduling meetings. So, you know, sometimes, you know, one person goes and books a meeting at 10 o'clock and, you know, somebody else in the team has organised a 10 o'clock meeting with a different client. So using these kind of poll options really kind of helps negate those issues. So we can then quickly create that poll and send that off, and that'll give that the ability for people to kind of vote for that. So scheduling polls are, you know, hopefully you can see a real nice feature in terms of doing that. Okay, well, the next things I'm going to show you now is kind of conditional formatting on emails. So sometimes emails can kind of get lost. Our inboxes can get a little bit busy. So highlighting emails that are perhaps from important people. So you might have perhaps got emails that you want to highlight that come from a particular client or come from your boss, or, you know, it might come, you know, from the managing director, the CEO, or from, you know, a particular supplier. We want those messages perhaps just to pop out a little bit more than they do with just kind of seeing the name. So there are some quick and easy things we can do, and they can get a lot more complex than what I'm going to show you today, but I'll just show you a couple of basic things. Now, if I wanted to apply some conditional formatting on email, if I go to my View tab when I'm in my main inbox screen, and I go to View Settings, there's an option in here that's called conditional formatting. So one thing to notice, as you can see here, I'm in this email box called Alex Wilbur. So when I'm talking about an email from me, hopefully it doesn't seem too confusing, but, you know, if we can just pretend I'm Alex in this case. So if I go to conditional formatting, and I'm going to add a rule to this view. So if I click on add here, I'm going to give it a name. So I'm going to say messages from Charlie. And what I want to do is any messages from Charlie, I'm going to change the font and I'm going to change the color. So I'm perhaps going to say any messages from Charlie, I want them to look red. I'm perhaps going to make the text size a little bit bigger in terms of the message so that it pops out, because actually if I get a message from Charlie, I really want to know about that, and just for it to really kind of pop through. And if I click OK, I can then go and add a condition. So this is just a name here where I've said messages from Charlie. If I go and add a condition, I'm now going to say I only want to see messages from and I'm just going to click OK. So what this will now do is that it says any messages from this email address, change the font color to red and make the text size a little bit big in this case. So if I now click OK and click OK, what we can now see is the emails that I've previously sent into this mailbox just kind of pop out as a different color. Now you can go and add all sorts of different conditions in here, and you can get a lot more complicated than what I'm showing today. So, you know, but in this case, you can go into things like the advanced options, and I can define more criteria. So I can look at, you know, address fields, you know, if I've been CC'd in, you know, you can see there's all sorts of different fields in here. There's literally hundreds and hundreds of different properties that you can start to apply conditional formatting on. So the purpose of this today is more just to give you an awareness that you can do these types of things, and you can set, you know, different things of what happens around it. So perhaps automatically categorizing messages to a certain thing based on certain criteria. You can get really quite complex and diverse about it, but in its basic form, like I said, it can just be as simple as changing the color and just making those messages stand out a little bit more. Now, in the same way that we can apply conditional formatting to emails, and we can change the characteristics of what's happening, we can do exactly the same, or a similar thing with kind of calendar items as well. So if I just change this to my work week, now in this case, so let me just quickly undo this. So if I'm just going to view settings, additional formatting. So I've just created a few kind of different test meetings in here. Is again all because these are all the same color. They don't necessarily kind of pop out to different things. So we can, this is one thing I really like doing, is applying conditional formatting to kind of calendar items. So it's just a little bit more visual. The colors help identify perhaps different types of meetings or different tasks that I've got assigned, dependent on how you're using your calendar. So if I now go, within calendar, go to view again, go to view settings, and go to conditional formatting, I can go and add. So again, I'm just going to do a similar thing, but Charlie meeting, and I'm going to add a condition. So I'm going to change the color of the meeting. Perhaps this time I'm going to make it green. I'm going to go and add a condition. So, and then in this case, I might actually just say, perhaps it's not all for Charlie's meetings. I only want to do the meetings that contain the word, in this case, appraisal. So if there's any meetings that contain the word appraisal, I actually just want those to really pop out, because if I look at my calendar, I want to know if I've got my appraisal coming up, and that's contained in the subject field. So can I click OK? Click OK again to that. And again, straight away, because I've used the scheduling poll, by the way, that's why these other meetings are on hold here, but I can see when my appraisal meeting is, it's popped out in a different color. And again, it's going to do that automatically. But I might just want to do that for things, rather than it being specific words, I might want to do that for, if it's organized by a specific person. And again, there's lots more options in here around it. So, I can change it, if the importance of the meeting is being raised. We've got all those kind of advanced kind of fields and things like that we can set different criteria around as well. But I think just sometimes, adding colors just makes it a little bit more visual and a little bit more easy to see what's happening. Okay, the next thing I'm going to show you today is something called search folders. So I speak to lots of different people about how they manage their inbox. Some people like to have 0 items in their inbox, and they're very particular that everything's got to be filed away. Don't want anything in their inbox at all. Likewise, I know some people that keep everything in their inbox. They don't file anything at all, and they just use kind of search capability and scroll through, which equally can be quite challenging in terms of managing. Now, one of the options that we have here is something called search folders. So search folders are basically allow us to create criteria of filtering emails, so we can just jump into a particular folder and we can see emails that meet a set criteria. So to create a search folder, I can go to right click on search folders within your mailbox view, go to new search folder, and you can see here there's some default options that are available. So perhaps I want a search folder for just all emails that are unread. So it's just going to group those all together. Mails that are flagged for follow-up. Mails either unread or flagged for follow-up, so we can put it in that way. Any email that's been marked as important. Again, we can create search folders for these different areas. So in this case, I'm going to create a search folder for any mail that's flagged for follow-up. So if I click on OK, and what I now have is this folder that's appeared. It's put number 1 on the end of it because I've already created one. But from my inbox or anywhere within my Outlook inbox, any emails that are flagged are going to show in this search folder. So immediately it's filtered everything else out. So as I've worked through my inbox, and you can see I've got lots of different emails in here, only the, if I was to perhaps go and flag this email, that's one that I want to follow up later on because I've got some late tasks that are due. Again, when I go to my follow-up folder, I can very quickly sort and view just the emails that I want to work on. And again, once I've followed up on those and I've marked them as complete, they're just going to disappear, and I can just start to filter those down. So it just means that you've kind of got this almost like this triage process that's taking place in your inbox that you can kind of sift through. Obviously, deal with the ones that you can deal with straight away, but any that you need to come back to, you can flag them and then use these kind of search folders as a way of filtering those out. And just for ease of kind of visibility, what you can also do there is add these to things like your favorites. So if I right click on that and do add to favorites, very quickly at the top here, I can see the emails that I need to follow up with. So I've perhaps got to go hunting through. So if I've got lots of subfolders and I've perhaps got lots of mailboxes that are potentially added to my Outlook, I can just see my important folders right up here at the top and using favorites to be able to do that. So again, I can do, add all sorts of different folders in here as favorites. So, so again, perhaps the important folders that I work on within my Outlook, I've got set as favorites at the top here. So again, really quick and easy to see. The next thing I'm going to move on to is something called quick steps. So, just appeared. So quick steps are a section that we've got here and this allows us to create a sequence of tasks just by one click. So perhaps where you're marking an email as read, you then flag it, you then perhaps want to file it to a particular folder. You've kind of got 3 clicks to be able to do that. Now with quick steps, we can do that kind of quickly and easily off the back of it. So and to show you to create a quick step, we can do this kind of straight from here. So if I go to create new, and I want to create a quick step. So and perhaps I might want to do flag, file, flag, file, and mark as read. And again, you can choose whatever actions that you want to do here. So my action here is I want to flag the message, and I'm going to perhaps not set, I can set a specific date if I want to do that, but in this case, I'm going to select no date. I'm going to then add my action. So I want to perhaps move this to a folder, and I'm going to choose a folder and put that into my follow-up folder. And then I'm going to choose another action and say mark as unread. And I'm now going to click finish. So I've now created this quick step here that's going to do those particular tasks for me. So if I've now got this email here that I want to perhaps stick in my follow-up folder and I want it to, I want to flag it, file it, mark it as unread, I can now click on this simple quick step that I've created and it's going to do those actions for me. So now if I go into that follow-up folder, I can see that message that I've just done. It's flagged it, it's marked it as unread, and it's moved it to that folder. So now I can just do those three actions with one kind of quick step. So again, we can start to almost create like a little macro or things like that for doing these little tasks and processes. Okay, so that's quick steps. You can see in here as well, there's some kind of default ones that are already been created. So if your Microsoft 365 tenancy has been set up so that you've got your organizational chart created within there. So when users are created, you can also automatically make sure that their manager is assigned, that the team that they belong to sits in there. They can then just email these, this message straight to the team or forward it straight to the manager. They can mark the task as done off the back of there. So again, I can just add that as a step. So I can mark it as complete. When it's done, move it to a specific folder. So perhaps I want it to go to Charlie's emails, and I do want to mark it as read now. So now when I click that quick step for done, it's automatically going to go and file that away. So again, I haven't got to go worry about removing the flag to that message and then moving it to that folder off the back of that. And again, it's automatically removed it from my search folder that I created earlier as well. Okay. The other thing, next thing I'm going to show you is around kind of contact groups. So I don't feel like me sometimes sending an email and you're constantly typing in the same email addresses again. Perhaps you've got the team that you work in, and you're sending a team message and you're just constantly typing in everybody's names to be able to send the message through. A quick and easy way of creating a group email for you to use personally is if you go and create a new contact group, and you can call the group, give it a name. So team, let's call this team email, and I can go and select, go and add my members to this. So I can go and pick my members from either the address book or any other contacts that you've got saved. By holding down the control key, I can just add multiple people into here, select members, and now very quickly I've created a group called team email that's going to go to those 4 individuals. So now when I go to send a new email message, all I need to do now is type in team email and test. That's automatically now just going to send that email to those 4 people. So creating contact groups, again, super quick and kind of really obvious thing to do, but again, quite often I see that people don't set these up. If I did just want to confirm who this is going to, if I click I can either hover the mouse over it and I can see the initials of the people that this is going to, and I can see that. Or if you click the little plus symbol, it will expand those so that you can just double check it is going to the right people off the back of there as well. Okay, so that's creating a contact group. Next thing I'm going to do is out of office. So again, something that's used by quite a lot of people, but not everybody. Not everybody knows that it's available. So if you're going on holiday, or you're perhaps going into a meeting, or you're just going to be out of the office for a particular day, setting an out of office message is useful for people to know that you're not necessarily going to respond as quickly as you normally would. So to set an out of office message, if you just click on File in the top left hand corner and go to Automatic Replies, and in brackets out of office, we can then send automatic replies either until we switch this particular rule off, or we can say just through a specific time window. So what we could say is actually I only want to send out of office replies between 9 and 12 o'clock today, and I'm going to put in a message here is, hey, first, normally send a little bit more, a little bit more detail in there, but I can create a custom message for people inside my organization and people outside my organization. So internally, it might be contact Joan in accounts, she'll sort you out. Externally, I might not necessarily want that message. I want a different message that my clients or my suppliers or people like that are going to see. So I can customize the automatic reply that they're going to get. What you can also do, though, is you can apply rules to your out of office message. So actually, if you are going on holiday and one of your colleagues is going to pick up your emails, you don't necessarily perhaps want to give them access to your full inbox, but any emails that are coming in, so that any emails that are coming in, during the period that you're away, I perhaps want to forward those through to them. So I can go to click on add a rule, and I can just put a forward on here and say forward all messages, in this case to Adele. And I could simply just click OK. And whilst that out of office rule is applied, it's going to forward all messages that come into me now through to Adele. Again, spend a little bit of time in here because you can really get quite advanced. So you might only want it to be messages that are sent directly to you, not necessarily CC'd ones in, because will Adele be bothered about ones that are CC'd? You might want to do it to specific actions. You can go a little bit more advanced, in terms of some really specifics around kind of attachments and importance and sensitivity, etc., of applying specific rules. But again, spend a little bit of time to have a look at this. It can be really quite a useful little feature. Okay, so setting out of office is really simple and straightforward. I'm not going to add any other rules to this. And click OK. Just pause. And it will notify you that your out of office message is on. So when you come back to the office, you've got a little banner that appears here that says automatic replies are automatically being sent. Automatic replies aren't just used if you're away from the office. So you might have things like a sales at inbox, an info at inbox, or something like that you just want to send some generic messaging back to people. So it might be, thank you for your inquiry, we'll come back to you within whatever SLA that you've got set, so we'll respond to you within 24 hours. You can just have an automatic reply that's just informational only, that sets expectations to the people that are sending that email through to you. Okay, the next thing I'm going to show you is something called quick parts. So going back to the, we perhaps send repetitive emails to people all the time. So, thank you for your inquiry, etc., etc. So you might find yourself typing the same, obviously, thanks for your inquiry, great to hear from you, blah, 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 here's some information, etc., etc. Now, rather than having to retype that same thing over and over again, we can use something called quick parts to simplify that whole process. So again, this is obviously a really short sentence, but perhaps there's a paragraph of text that we normally put in, or perhaps something a little bit longer in terms of information. Now, rather than typing this over and over again, the next time I create a new email message, in this case, what I can do is go to the Insert tab at the top, go to Quick Parts, and I can do this here to say Save Selection to Quick Part Gallery. And I'm going to give this a name. So, hey, thank you is fine. In this case, I'm going to say what gallery it's going into. I can categorize these if I want to as well. And I can just click on OK. So now, the next time I ever go to send this same paragraph out that I've always typed out and I've had to do it as a repetitive piece, when I go to send a new email message, I can go to Quick Parts, and the ones that I've created here are now starting to be saved in a gallery. And again, I can categorize these and can end up with a huge length, huge amount of these as well. But rather than typing it in again, I can quickly select that, and I could start to build these up as well. So if I had multiple items in my gallery, I might have, I normally use that paragraph, then I use that paragraph, and I might just change the odd word in there. Actually, I can very quickly compile a fairly generic email, and just quickly go and customize the little bits that I need to and press send. So again, just little things to get a bit of time back in terms of sending emails. Okay, we're rapidly running out of time, so I'm going to move on to Microsoft To Do now. So tasks is something that's been in Outlook for an awful long time. So tasks, if you've seen tasks before, this will kind of look fairly familiar. And you can, let me just turn that out of office off. If you want to go and create a new task, you can kind of go and do it in here, and it's okay. However, Microsoft is moving to and has moved to an application called To Do, which is now integrated within Microsoft Outlook. Now, I strongly suggest, if you're not using To Do and you like working from lists and in terms of keeping yourself organized, is installing the To Do app on your mobile phone. There's a To Do app that you can install from the Microsoft Store as well. So even outside of Outlook, just minimize that down. I have the To Do app installed as an app on my toolbar. And, firstly, what I can see here now is I can start to see any tasks that I've got assigned. So any tasks that I've put down to be assigned to me to do today. So these are things that, I absolutely must get these things done today. Now, your My Day view in To Do refreshes every day. So it's not going to get rid of your tasks, but it will create you a blank My Day tomorrow. So when I go to this page tomorrow, these tasks won't appear on there because it'll be a new day for me to plan. However, my tasks will still be there, so I can start to see things like, I can see all of my tasks in one place. I've got any emails that I've flagged, so if there's any things that I need to do, they're all showing within here. If I've had any tasks assigned to me from other people, I can see all those in here as well. Any tasks that I've got planned, so I've got some things here that I've got assigned to do today. I've got some things that are planned, for next year. Off the back of this, I can see any tasks that are assigned for later today. I could see any that I'm overdue on as well. Actually, I've not put my expenses in there. And you can create new lists within To Do as well. So actually, you might just want to create, a personal list for whatever, for whatever reason. So it might be my shopping list, So I can create some kind of personal lists within here as well and assign tasks. Now, the nice thing with To Do as well is that when I'm adding a task in there, so I could say, actually, I need to submit the report by next Monday. So because I've put by next Monday, it automatically knows that there's a date assigned to this. And over on the right here, you can see it's actually automatically assigned this to be Monday the 2nd. So if I press enter now, it's gone and created me that task that I want to do. It's added it to my day view because I've created it from there. But if I go now to my planned tasks, I can actually see that I've got a task in there to submit the report for next Monday, and it automatically appears in my list. Now, I'm kind of showing you that within the To Do app, but it's exactly the same within Outlook as well. So the To Do is this kind of blue tick symbol that you can see here. And again, I can see that shopping list that I created. I can see my flagged emails that I've created here. It really starts to help me organize my day. Any tasks that have been assigned to me, I can see those, what I've got planned. So if you do like working from lists and you've always found things like tasks doesn't quite cut it, I've found To Do really, really good, particularly because it synchronizes across all of your devices. You can install the app everywhere, and it's just simple and easy to use. And when you've done something, you can just simply go and tick it off. It gives you a nice little ting symbol, which you know that it's been done. But a really nice, helpful planning tool, and in terms of kind of creating lists and action items. So that's kind of Microsoft To Do. So in terms of for today, like I said, we're pretty much out of time now anyway. So hopefully you found that to be useful. We will be sharing the content and the recording with you all and anybody else that kind of registered for the event today. If anyone's got any questions, feel free to kind of pop those in the chat box. I'm not sure if we've already got any in there because I've had my screen minimized. But say if you've got any other questions, just feel free to pop those through. So yeah, George, senior question there. How can encryption be set up? We have premium, so we'll absolutely reach out to you and kind of take you through that process. It's something that we need to configure in the admin portal, but again, it's a fairly quick and easy process to set up. So yeah, no problem at all. We'll reach out to you and get that set up. Do we have any other questions at all? I say, if not, thank you very much for your time this morning. Like I said, hopefully that you found that useful. We have got some other webinars upcoming. So there, and forgive me because I haven't got the date to hand. I'm not sure, Mark, whether you've got it, but we've got a cybersecurity talk that's coming up in the beginning of October. Sorry, middle of October.
18th of October.
Yeah, so on the 18th of October, where we've got a bit of an expert panel together. So we've got a really good team of people together. So we've got a marketing agency in terms of using AI and the cybersecurity implications around that. And we've got a guy called Neil Richardson, who was a lecturer at Sheffield University, who's going to be attending as well, who's going to be kind of talking us through the things that we really need to consider, particularly around AI and cybersecurity. And how that's evolving. So, because one of the things that's literally been announced yesterday, well, certainly in the last couple of days, there's a new Microsoft product that's coming out, or a new Microsoft license that's coming out, which is something called Microsoft Copilot, and that's going to bring AI capability into Microsoft Office. There is an additional licensing fee for it, but it's going to be able to automate lots of different processes. So as an example, things like a Teams meeting, when you're talking those things through, and there's particular actions and there's agenda items and there's things that have been agreed, the AI tool will automatically assign you tasks, within, either to do or planner, and without somebody having to manually go and create those set of actions and those minutes and forward them round to people. It's going to do that for you automatically, and then things like content creation, etc., is all going to be in there as well. A lot more secure than things like ChatGPT, where we've got no idea where the data's going. So feel free to come to that webinar. Let's say middle of October, we will be kind of circulating that as well. So once again, thank you very much for your time, and look forward to seeing you then.